All right, well, I'll get to these deviance questions then. Um, so how many people have seen Food Inc. before? Because you already did that. That's the last discussion. How many people have already like saw it before this class? No? Oh, okay, good. There's a few people, right? Right. Hey, it's good to see you this morning. Um, so it's not a particularly new film, but I think it's a film that they do a really, really, really excellent job with. So let's talk about that. I kind of wanted to open up with Food Inc. And Deviance before I got to anybody's answers about what you think is deviant or what your parents do. Anything that you were watching in that film, because we're talking about a broken food system in many ways, that the documentary is. Any thing that stands out in your head, I think there's a bunch, right, is particularly deviant from Food Inc. or in regard to our food system. This might want to be something that you write about for part number 3, which I never really, much considered before, but you could do deviance in our food system in something specific. Maybe that's, food waste, and maybe it's not, whatever. But what do you think? Go ahead. I'll let it out there. And that was the last discussion. So just kind of touching base with this chapter's thoughts in mind, but for that.
I kind of thought that whenever they were showing the chickens in the farms and how they basically, instead of having them in barns or areas where there were windows and everything,
Yep.
how the corporations tried to upgrade them to like these big metal things with no windows, and where the chickens were basically blocked off, and basically this corporation's telling them that what they're either going to do what they say or they're going to lose their contract, basically forcing them to do what they want.
Yeah, all that sounds deviant. I mean, we could just pick any part of that, but I would say, yep, not being able to say anything about your chicken operation, what you do, what you're feeding, what the conditions are like, and they couldn't legally show them the inside of those places, right? I think
Yeah.
yeah, they would drop their contract in a heartbeat. And I mean, there's not much to those places. It's dark. They feed the chickens all the time. And a couple of years ago when we did broiler chickens, they get big pretty fast, even when you're working with ones that are just normal ones, even when you're not feeding them sort of GMO super grow feed, which you can do. But they get really big really fast, so it becomes difficult for them to walk. And a lot of them will die from like little mini heart attacks and strokes just because of the rate at which they breed them. Yeah, it's intense. So if you imagine that on a big scale, they don't move. So of course they have to feed them all sorts of antibiotics. And then that, I believe, made one of those chicken farmers that was interviewed sick and also resistant to having antibiotics work for her on so many different levels. So making the farmers sick, but under the threat of sort of, we're going to take away this corporate contract, you're going to lose all your money. And right, I mean, how much were those chicken houses? Was it like $500,000? Something staggering. So this is one of the things that we can look at with deviance in our food system, which is what have we done to farmers with an agricultural treadmill? And an agricultural treadmill would be like, here's the next thing you get, the $500,000 to $600,000 tractor. Now you've got to pay that back, but you can harvest a little more. But then eventually everybody gets those $500,000 tractors and they're harvesting more. And then the price is down. So then you get another piece. And so with chicken farmers, it's like you add another, sure, we'll pay for your $500,000 chicken house. It doesn't really cost that, but they're going to charge you that. So yeah, it's like, then those people are left with some pretty tremendous life decisions because they've been put in a scenario where they're sick, they're in a ton of debt. I mean, it sounds vicious for sure, and certainly deviant. I mean, when you're watching them sweep up all the chickens, into those little things, it doesn't really, it might not register if you've never been around chickens. I know that, or it registers because they're animals. But if you've ever spent any time around chickens, it's bizarre. They have a ton of personality. Like, there are chickens that want to get up on your shoulder, and there are chickens that love to be held, and there are chickens that are just assholes, and there are chickens it's kind of like people, right? And so they are filled with so much more personality than I would have guessed. So yeah, when you see that, obviously we kind of don't think about that. We reduce that to like, we eat a lot of meat, but we don't think about the life of the animal. And I eat meat, so I'm not saying that that's a deal breaker for me. But I don't think that we consider that that was a living animal if we continue to treat them like that, right? The poorer we treat them, the less we have to worry about it. Sad to see the chickens not being able to keep up their own weight. Yeah, yep, and that's bad. How profit has been chosen as the priority when producing food. I mean, you are talking about the health of 1 billion people, right? And worldwide, 7 billion people. And if that's all, or much of that is sliding at once, yeah, that's also something else to consider. That's a very big picture piece, but yeah. All right, other things that you thought might be deviant about the sort of the way the food system was working, or what you saw in the film.
Monsanto and the way that they treat farmers and how they will take them to court, deliberately knowing that it'll just ruin them, and they'll just,
Yeah,
it's terrible.
yeah, and I think that they were bought by Bayer or something, but they were recently they wanted to shed the name, of course, because when you think of the word evil, you probably think of Monsanto. I mean, it's just they've been branded for sort of what they are, and when a multinational corporation that has a bottom line that's bigger than some countries decides to sue a local farmer, that's game over. I mean, they're going to ruin their life. And I mean, we should look right now because the last few years have been so horrible as far as like policies for farmers. It's always been bad, but it's been really bad lately that the government and local farm bureaus were issuing suicide like information, like because the number of farmers that are committing suicide right now is alarming. So they're releasing information in rural areas about how to avoid suicide. What are the signs of someone who's in depression? And so so we know that this is impacting these people hard. And this is a farmer who how did it happen? Somebody explain that to me. How could they just go sue a farmer? What did they sue him for? And how do they do that? What's the process? What are they suing about?
Didn't they sue him for the possession of their GMO seeds that they have a trademark for?
Well, there was a bit of a genetic marker in his field because they drove their truck full of, right, genetically modified corn or they have a field, and then of course that pollinated his field. So by no action or intent of his own, right?
He became in possession with those seeds, and he's not allowed.
Yeah, and they go around and they'll test. They'll go around, go into your field, find it, and they're looking at. So this is the step that's been made is now that they either have. I think they have done this now. I have to check, but they were looking at, and I believe they have patented a pig. Now, corn and plants is something else. But when you start to patent life, like genetic mapping and stuff, not just of a plant, but of creatures. And then you could release salmon into a wild population, and if they try and spawn with others, then you could say that's my genetic. Anyway, it obviously legally, it's a battle that farmers will never win. And yeah, that was a big piece about seed saving. And in my Soch 220, my environmental Soch, I do a huge thing on seed saving, and I bring in all the stuff I can find from around my farm that has propagated and repropagated and what that looks like. Because you can't just take a tomato that's a genetically modified or a non-organic tomato seed that you plant and grow. You can't take that, rinse off the goo, and plant it in the ground. You can't take an apple because it's been irradiated and it's genetically modified, and you can't take that seed and grow an apple tree. It has to be a certain type of seed. And of course, they've done this to protect that so that farmers can't do what is the most primary thing. Imagine this. One of the most primary things that farmers need to do is save their own seed. Why?
So they can plant it the next year and not spend as much money on seeds.
Yeah, not only planting, but I mean, you don't have to buy your seed stock year in, year again. You find genetic traits that you like and plants that grew really well, and you keep that. But that is inadvertently being, ruined by crops. Now we go down to Mexico and we look at a place that, indigenous corn, there's thousands of strains that are all very important. And they have recently kicked out a lot of these GMO and a lot of these farming operations, but because they were ruining their strains of corn that have been around with that culture for hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of years. So good. All of these things seem particularly deviant, and we don't know much about them because it's a bit out of sight, out of mind. So on one level, our food system functions for us because you can go to the grocery store right now and get a very strange piece of fruit that is from someplace on the other side of the globe. And that's a really amazing thing. But that is also a very attenuated window. We're in a very small window where that's possible right now. So on one hand, it functions for us. On the other hand, it only functions for us through an incredible amount of dysfunction for the people primarily who grow the food, right? Produce the food and try and bring it to market. Good. What else? Anything else stand out in your mind in the film in general, or any questions you might have? Anything?
I thought that the E. coli stuff really stood out overall because of the mother who was like fighting because her son died from it. And then they talked about how if you like feed cows just a grass-fed diet for a week, you can literally get E. coli out of their system. So it's like actually easy. Like you should just feed them what you should be feeding them. Like it was just crazy to me because it's such a big problem. You see it in the news all the time.
Yeah, and we see it in the news all the time, even though they keep taking away that news. Like, I mean, outbreaks, food recalls. I do this live, I could screenshot it, but if we go to the USDA, the food recall, there's a food recall list, and you start to go through the list, it's like by January or February, you're 4 or 5 pages deep. And it's like 10 million pounds of meat, 5 million pounds of lettuce, listeria, glass shards. I mean, it's everything from foreign contaminants. And it's good. On one hand, it's important that we have the infrastructure that can look for that, right? I mean, that's kind of a big deal. On the other hand, we have such a huge food system that there's no way that it doesn't continue to fail because like Joel is out processing those chickens in his field and it has less parts per million of bacteria than all of those chickens that have been processed, washed with ammonia, frozen, and then reheated just like the meat. Same thing out in Greeley. They're standing there in their whole lives up to their chest in feces, and they go in there and try and process that, but there's not going to be a way without chemicals, without freezing, and then without cooking the meat really, really thoroughly that you're not going to get that, right? Salmonella or E. coli, and that is the difference in size. That's it. You look at smaller farms, they're processing the meat outside, like I said, even, and it's nowhere near when you're trying to do that much beef, every hour. And then if we go a little bit further and look at the conditions of Greeley, who's working at these plants, how the companies are actually paying to bring people up illegally and then busing these folks up here. They work for them, and then they have the cops come in and take them away. And the cops know about this. The police departments know about this. They have a routine that they go through with the packing place there. And I would say human rights violations to be sure, but oftentimes, right, what do we hear? Well, from a functionalist point of view, we hear the government saying, these aliens, these people coming here. But from a conflict point of view, we're going to say, wait. You're the ones busing these people here, getting them here, making them work for next to nothing, having them live in fear, and then purposefully having them arrested and taken home. I can't think of anything more deviant than that, right? Like making them part of our justice system after we're the ones, your company's the one that brings them up. But I don't know if we look and ever see the company having to, any of those companies having to answer for that. We just kind of the usual suspects, those brown folks, they're coming up here, they're stealing our lives and our jobs, which clearly they are not, right? So yeah, just the way that this food system works in general has a lot of deviance to it to be able to bring us these services. Lucky to have dad that grew up around this, worked in the industry too, so we've always tried to stay away from processed meat. Yep. So size of the operation matters. Again, we've gone into these communities, sociologists, anthropologists did back in the 40s and 50s and looked at giant farming communities and smaller farming communities and the rates of happiness, the rates of asthma, the rates of depression, how involved community members were, and always in smaller operations, there's more social capital, there's more people, that are happier, that aren't experiencing as much depression. If you look at these communities that are large farming communities, there's all sorts of social repercussions that we've already examined and look at to those. And Greeley is one of those places, right? So yeah, awesome. When I was a kid, it's funny, somebody said the local butcher. When I was a kid, and I don't know, you can raise your hand or thumbs up if you've had this experience, but we would go to a town 20 minutes away where they had a butcher in Lena, and my dad would take me to the back where you could look in the back room and they hoist the cow up, and they've got a gun thing that pumps a big rod through its head, and then retracts the rod, and they hang it, and it bleeds. And that's what they do one at a time before they butcher it. It's not like 20 cows at once. But my dad was like, here's where your food comes from. And I was like, ah. But as a kid, you saw that. And we went from hundreds, if not thousands, of butchers to like around 12, I think, or less actual like processing plants. Now, what's that mean when you get into a pandemic? Well, and you've heard this maybe, but that was all this meat was being backed up. We had people like my neighbor, George, who works on he's 90 and he's retired, and he works on 3 different ranches. He's retired. But they're waiting. They've got hundreds of cows that are waiting that can't get slaughtered, that are putting on weight. And as they put on weight, they can't be shipped in the same way. And so then all these farmers are getting hosed on the back end because they can't get them, because there's only so many slaughterhouses, and COVID was passing through all these places. And you can't tell me how you're going to do that during COVID safely. The larger it is, so you can see how little things compound the problem, but a pandemic just makes a giant food system all that much less safe. So anyway, yeah, good. Other things that stand out from the movie. I'm glad we're talking about it, because if I was showing it in class, we would be, and I don't want to skip over it too much, because there's a lot of interesting stuff in the film for sure. Anything else that stands out to you? All right. Well, good job. Now, to be positive this morning, because it's early, there are so many more people that are growing food. Like I said, we get our seeds early. Seed companies were sold out. We get our chickens early. Chicken companies are sold out. They're backed up. You can't get your chickens in a week like you could last year. Now it's like a couple months and you get them. We just got 60 more babies because we had gotten coyoted. I don't know. Did I tell you that? We got coyoted a while back. So we got 60 more babies. They're super cute. Maybe I'll post a video. They're adorable, actually. And they're like this big. And when you come in the coop, they're in a thing and they look at you like this because they're tiny. They like look up and they're like, but because they turn their head, it looks like they're gangster. And they're sizing you up. What's up, son? Anyway, they're super cute. All right, so yeah, let's go back here. So what I was saying is, there's a lot of good things happening in the community. More people are gardening than ever. More people are growing food than ever. Getting reconnected with backyard chickens. There are more CSAs. Goodness sakes. My parents are in Illinois, where there's not even bicycle lanes in the town, and they are part of a CSA whose husband is starting a microbrewery. I mean, so even they have access to, really fresh organic food. So the good news is that this big system is failing. Why is that the good news, Jason? Well, because it's bringing an abundance of food that's really nutrient. You get an egg in the store and it's been shipped 3 or 4 weeks and it's lost most of its nutrients. If you look at an egg, it is probably the most nutrient protein packed food on earth. You ship it for 3 weeks in the store and it's still good to eat and it's been refrigerated the whole time and you're getting a fraction of the micronutrients. If I go outside and get a couple eggs for breakfast this morning, I'm getting all of that available to me and more. It's nuts. So, when we talk about like GMO or organic or whatever, the value of that food, one of the values that's so much more robust for organic food, things like that, would be the fact that it is so much closer, so much fresher, and therefore so much more nutrient available. So other things to look at, right, when we're looking at food. And we sold out of our eggs this week. So yeah, and hey, if you've never gone to NoCo Farmers Market, a NoCo virtual farmers market, look it up. Our Ravensdale farm is on there, not to buy our eggs, because we just got hammered by a coyote, so we're getting less eggs. But there's a lot of the people that do local honey, local organic candy, like all sorts of high-end stuff, mushrooms, gourmet mushrooms. Julie's art is up there. Our farm stuff is up there. We did starter plants, so we sold like 1,000 or more starter plants this spring to people that are organic, things like that. So anyway, NoCo virtual farmers market, really cool place. All right. So how deviant do you think your teacher is? All right, let's look at this. I'm ready. I can handle this morning. So Eva and I are rocking the same haircut. Yes, that's right. This is, by the way, the most deviant haircut ever for a man to wear. I identify as the gender male. I have had my hair permed, straight, short, moosed, This guy here. I've had it dyed different colors. I have had it down to the middle of my back. You name it, and I have never gotten more dirty looks in my life than when I'm 40 and totally boring and put it up like this 7 years ago because it's like comfortable for me. I get the most hateful looks. It's seriously like, and I know because I spent a lifetime of weird haircuts, like enjoying hateful looks, and now I'm just like, really, this. So that's why I kept it in for you today, because it's the most deviant thing I do anymore. I'm pretty boring. All right. Let's look at this. You think how deviant do you think your teacher is? Somewhat. 21 said that. Very. 9 said that, and not at all. 5. Why would 5 of you lie so deeply? Why would? Are you trying to get a good grade? Do I strike you as a not at all deviant person? Let's just go there once. No. 21 said somewhat. That's really nice. When I teach live, like in the last few semesters, I got to tell you, when I teach live, that number that think I'm very deviant is like always the big number. So this semester, in my other class and in this class, only somewhat. Thank you. I appreciate that. You're making me feel normal out here. All right. Let's look at the next question. Please type one act that you consider deviant. Now, I guarantee you that our lists between ourselves and our parents are going to look a bit different, right? And yesterday we went over the parent list, and it was a riot. Like what you think your parents consider deviant, because it is not, they were not the same. So let's see how this class pans out. All right. Stealing, 5, drug use, smoking, graffiti in Singapore. That's kind of specific. Somebody, you better watch yourself. If there's somebody in this class that's been traveling the world, Singapore, there are some countries you do not want to get caught doing graffiti in. I'm going to tell you that right now. Murder. Getting multiple meals at the dining hall. All right. Psilocybin. For those of you not aware of what psilocybin is, that would be the active ingredient in like psychedelic mushrooms or mushrooms that have psychoactive effects. Not wearing a mask makes it onto our list. Now, would not wearing a mask, this is how culture changes. Would not wearing a mask have made it to our list last year? No, people would be like, what? Halloween? Now it makes it in the top 10 of our list of what we think is deviant right now. Yeah, that's right. All right, racism. Getting super drunk at a 2-year-old's birthday party. All right. We had our deck collapse during our baby shower for Storm because we were so excited about it. Yeah, rage. Wait, what? Seriously. It was a bad deck, actually, more than it was that we were partying. Robbery. Crime. Name something you think is deviant. Crime. Bam. Bam. Storm's in the background. He's like, bam. Talking loud when everyone else is quiet. Wearing your mask under your nose. Lying. Smoking weed or drinking. Wearing jeans to church. Okay, I'm just going to say it right now. This class is very unique. I have many more people in my other class, but these are the stranger answers for sure, like by far. Okay, being disrespectful towards and then the last one, just marijuana. All right. What stands out to you on this list? Why? The first ones are heavy: murder, stealing, crime, robbery. Any thoughts on this list?
I was gonna say that the not wearing jeans at church thing, that was kind of weird to me just because I've been to church multiple times in like hoodies and sweats. So yeah.
I think there's some more formal old school churches going on out there, right?
Yeah.
Where if you were to show up in jeans, people would be like, seriously? Like, what?
Yeah. I haven't seen those churches in a long time though. A lot of churches that I know nowadays, they don't really care like what you wear. As long as you look decent, you can't come in there looking crazy. But as long as you look decent, most of the churches I went to, they don't really mind.
I mean, nowadays it's more hip, right? Like when I was a kid, a mega church was never a thing. There was never a thing with like a band and a stage and lights and a kiosk where you put your credit card in to give right inside the front door. Like that is so different from the church I grew up in. But I mean, they're trying to find ways to draw people into worship and maybe make it more exciting. I grew up in the Episcopal church, and it was like stand up, sit down, kneel, kneel, kneel. You know, people did not sing the hymns like they were. Yeah, people were like, it was pretty boring. I gotta admit, pretty boring. My dad, when he was a kid in Freeport, used to go on Sunday mornings to the Baptist church that was their First Baptist in Freeport and listen outside the window because they had the full gospel choir and stuff like that, and pretty amazing stuff. Whenever I'm back, we actually managed to get there once a year for a thing they're doing. I haven't been back this year, but pretty awesome. All right, other people, what do you think? Anything stand out on that list or seem pretty typical? Not drinking or doing drugs in high school as deviant, right? What do you think about that? That's an interesting one. I didn't. I was really straight in high school. And so I'll answer that question. I definitely think that people think that if you don't party to a certain degree, that's deviant. Like maybe that's an expectation for high school, or maybe that's an expectation for college, right? So people who don't, like, it's like, what? Good. All right, well, let's look at the parent list once. All right, parent list here. Speeding, talking back to them, smoking pot, being a freelance writer instead of working 9 to 5. Talking back disrespectfully. Okay, well, let's just start with, is this the parent list? Yes, talking back made it to our list twice so far in the top 5. Back talking. All right, that's a thing. Back talking. All right. Body customizations, tattoos, piercings, getting a tattoo, tattooing and drugs, recreational drug use, having tattoos. Whoa, tattoo. There we go. We're getting some in there. This is really interesting to me because that's changed so much. Being dishonest, spending the night with your partner, also not wearing a mask. Drug use, sleeping in past 9. This did not make it to our list. That did not make it to our list. Fair to say that no one that's in college, or very few people, think it's deviant to sleep past 9. Matter of fact, I actually only had one college class that was before 10:30, and that was on purpose. I was not about to try and do learning at this time in the morning. So my heart and my sympathies are with you at this 8 o'clock class. Actually, that's impressive. Anybody's in here. 33 people. That's awesome. All right. Not doing my chores, not cleaning my room, lying to them, treating Sunday as anything other than a rest day, piercing my eyes. Ouch. Sneaking out, premarital cohabitation, premarital sex. It's like the way these line up is hilarious. All right, so make some observations about the parent. Now that we have 2 lists, murder, stealing, robbery, and then the other one is premarital sex, talking back, tattoos. Make some observations. This is good sociology. I'm a parent. This embarrasses me. This list, it went from funny to embarrassing. As I'm now trying to enforce the law. Did you talk back to me, Storm? Don't you talk back to me. What do you think? Make some observations between the 2 lists. Those are good.
So my parents are divorced, so my dad and my mom have really different stances on what's deviant, I guess. My dad will just offer me alcohol, or will be like, do you want to hit from this bong? Whereas my mom wanted to be a nun at one point, and is she's you can do these things, just never tell me about them. She has that stance. She's not until you're 21 and it's legal. So they have very different perceptions of what is deviant in terms of substances.
That's like Colorado living next to Nebraska.
Yeah, but see, my dad's from Texas, so
okay.
He's not even from Colorado.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just interesting though. Yeah. Okay. So what happens? And that's a really good. This is why I love sociology. What happens when the people who teach us what is deviant or what is not deviant, forget laws and politicians and people breaking their own rules. What about when in our home, there are two very different definitions, or even after in two different homes, there are two very different definitions of deviance. Oh, that's interesting. See, that's good.
Yeah.
Other folks, some observations about the lists.
One thing, Gabby, my parents are kind of the same. My dad lived in the Philippines for 4 years, so he was excuse me, he was used to like smoking weed just because, I don't know, in the Philippines that's what a lot of high schoolers did. So like my dad's definitely like okay with it. But my mom definitely has a different stance, and it's also weird because I'm from California, so just in recent years weed has become legal, and like it's still just in general considered deviant in California even though it's legal now.
Yeah, good. Yep. Yeah. So there's some people out there, it's like my mom, did I mention that before? Who their line in the sand with deviance is just like if it's legal or not. Like if it's illegal, she's not gonna do it, right? And I was like, Mom, you're suffering from fibromyalgia. Cannabis could be a possible alternative for you. Nope. And then last year, midnight, January, legalized in Illinois. And I'm not supposed to say whether my mom or not has tried any of that for her muscle pain and stuff, but I will say this. Some people, when it's illegal, they don't do it. And when it's legal, it's okay. I'm a sociologist from a conflict perspective that's like, that law is unjust. I'm going to break it. And then my mom, who's a functionalist, would be like, you don't want to do that, honey. That could have some serious repercussions for you. And I'm like, yeah, but that's unjust. So I'm not, right? Mom, look who wrote that law. They're awful. It's a law. That's all that matters. So yeah, right? Big differences. I like this. We should ask how many of those activities the parents participated in when they were our age. Yeah, we all know the answer to that, so we don't want to do that. Yeah, that's the deal. That's interesting though, like how you parent about deviant things and what you actually believe. I'm sure for a lot of parents that's different. Julie and I went with a very straightforward approach with our boys. We're not going to play you baby Beethoven. We're just going to play you real music. We're not going to tell you that something's not a certain way. It is, and then we'll explain it to you. So like I said, they're little mini sociologists already that have a pretty good grasp of gender and, all the things that we study. So, all right, good. All right, other things that stand out on those two lists is deviant. These lists are very different. What do you think?
I think it's interesting like how different the lists are, because I think the ones that like we thought were deviant is kind of more like the typical like answer that you would expect. But I think when we were coming up with the list for like what our parents think is deviant, it was more of like how their views like differ from ours, because I think they could have seen like I feel like everyone sees like murder, like stealing, all those things like that we see as deviant as well, but we were just like going for what was like different.
Right. And there's that piece again, right? That deviance has two components. One is an element of difference that we recognize, and the other is a moral judgment. So, it's a really great thing to be looking at what we think is deviant just in base, like you said, robbery, murder, all that, versus what our parents tell us all the time is deviant. It's not like your parents oftentimes are like, well, when you go to that party tonight, don't murder somebody, come back home safely. The thing would be don't drink too much, and it's funny that tattooing made our list. Don't go out, drink too much, cohabitate, and wake up in the morning with a tattoo. Don't do that. That's not a good idea. All right, good. Other observations about how we perceive deviance differently.
So thinking about deviance in the family unit was really interesting to me because I am totally the deviant one in the family. And I'm like, by my standards, I'm not that deviant, right? I'm like a normal 36-year-old person who's like kind of boring or whatever, but compared with my family, my dad and my brothers are like engineers and finance people and things like that. And they're very like formal and straight-laced and like, this is how you succeed. You get a job in a 401k and then, all of this stuff. And I am so different. Like I have a business and I've been, living completely differently than they have. And I'm just
Right.
super creative and open and all of this stuff. And so I've always been like the black sheep of the family for that, and even though my business is like working and it's fine, my dad still tells me all the time, you can't be a free spirit forever. You're going to have to succumb to the 9 to 5, and I'm like, what is this? Like, why is that considered deviant? It's so interesting to me.
You bring up so many interesting things right there. The first one is, who is the deviant one in their family? Do we have any of those people in this class that are considered, for some reason or another, the deviant one? I don't like to apply color to it because I think there's all sorts of historical weight to it. So when we say the black sheep of the family, but just who's, like, you just bring up a great concept, which is a lot of times there's a deviant one. And then you get to this other part, which is, I think the deviant one is oftentimes the free spirit. I think the deviant one is the artist. I think the deviant one is the one that just the rules that are laid before me do not resonate. So then you bring up something really great, which is, what if you are still a free spirit in your 30s or 40s or 50s or 60s? Can you imagine? Like, I want to know if it gets more intense every decade, right? Like, people in your 40s are like, yeah, you're such a free spirit. People in your 50s are like, pretty free spirit. And by the time you're 70 and you're still like, yay, people are like, free spirit. I don't know. Like, is there more pressure to succumb to that in ways? And what's that mean? And how does society have an impact on how free your spirit is and why that stands out the older you get, right? Like, this is college. Express yourself. Be wild. Party, right? You hit 30. Curb that free spirit shit already, would you please?
Totally. It's like in my 20s, it was more like, whatever, she's off. Like, I lived in the mountains for a while and they're like, whatever, she's just a hippie. But then as soon as I hit 30, it was like, when are you going to actually become a person? And it's weird. It's really weird how that has changed.
Well, in the immortal words of Admiral Akbar from the movie The Empire, or Return of the Jedi, it's a trap. So anybody tells you being an adult is the most awesome thing in the world, just tell them it's a trap. And I don't think there's any finer advice out there than that. Yeah. Be real, be serious, do your thing, crush it, but don't be too serious. And don't lose that free spirit. That's funny. These are such great conversations about deviance. See, this is why we get into a reciprocal discussion about all these different topics all semester long, because there's no way that I can sit up here and lecture in front of you and knowledge you, and yet you all have so many different experiences that add to this conversation and examples that I've never come up with. There are some things that we've come up with. This is a unique class also. Like I said, I'm getting that picture, but this is some things that have come up in this class that haven't in other classes in 10 or 13 years. Or perspectives on deviance that I'm thinking about, like that free spirit thing. And the more, there are so many cool things in sociology, so many ways to look at these things and be like, wow, I want to look at that. Like, society promotes conformity. We know that, right? Structurally, functionally, for all sorts of functional reasons, we promote conformity. But why do we try so hard to do that? What expectations do we have around that? And are there other cultures that promote like creativity and free expression and like that promote that longer in life that has some benefits to those cultures? You know what I'm saying? I think that one element of all of this seems very interesting to me. So, all right. Any more comments about these lists or deviants so far? Anything? I'll get to sort of more technical stuff, but any last words? Any last words? That's probably not the best phrasing to be using in the morning with a class full of tired college students during a pandemic. Any last words? All right, I'll refrain from doing that in the future. Oh, shoot. Well, I like all the mask stuff. Personally, we've got to turn that not wearing a mask into deviant. We've got to make that the deviant thing. And I think actually more than people making it the deviant thing, the more and more people in positions of power deny that, I feel like the more it looks deviant anyway. The more you, So me personally, we're going to get used to this thing. Hopefully we'll get to a place where we're not wearing masks. Some cultures have just been wearing masks for the last couple decades anyway. out of respect for other people and, you know, not just protecting themselves. So maybe not. And yes, Allie, your dog is adorable. We put a mask last night on our Boston Terrier, and that was also adorable. I don't know. We were going to take a picture of her in a mask. I have no idea what started that, but anyway. All right. Any questions as we move forward? I'll put out a study guide this weekend. It's chapters 4, 5, and 6. Yua, Verena, anything to add to this, or anybody from the class, anything to add about Deviance? We're wrapping up the chapter. I did just get my dominatrix outfit back. Maybe Tuesday. I know. I keep threatening this, and I know you think I'm joking, but leather. It fits well. What else? How else can I help you? Anybody? We should just talk about having a baby and being deviant right now, because I know that James isn't getting a whole lot of sleep. It can't possibly be happening. And you know, the weird thing is you know at first that you're not getting any sleep. And then the deviant thing is eventually you think that you've adjusted to doing normal life things without sleep. And that's when it gets dangerous. Watch out, my man. There's a time at which you will think you will have mastered sleeplessness. That is only going to lead to a missing finger or some kind of industrial accident, some really bad decision. So just watch yourself. Remember, right now you're a prime human being, but you are vulnerable and you are not getting the sleep you need to get. And that's just, yeah. You know why I'm giving you that advice? Because people are on their own when they have kids. That's deviant, right? There's a million books, nobody buys them, and then people say cute things like, oh, get some sleep. But they don't say, you will want to die because you will get so little sleep. Nobody actually just looks you in the face and is like, I'm gonna tell you what, son, it's about to go down. So anyway, great. Well, next exam is the 16th, I believe. Is that right? Next Friday? Is that possible? Wow. And next week is week 8, and that is officially halfway through the semester. All right. So we're rolling. And yeah, anything else? Questions? Make sure to do a good post. You have to post by today your first post for the discussion. Don't blow that off. Those super easy points. You know, absolutely. And check out American Drug War. Will there be a study guide? Yep, I'll be putting out a study guide this weekend. I have one from last semester. I just want to make sure that it's matching up and maybe add to it with things we've talked about, you know, things like that, rather than just kind of push a generic one out towards you all. So look for that this weekend sometime.
How long is the exam going to be open for?
It'll be open from Friday morning again till Saturday, like at noon.
Okay.
So, you know, I don't want to confuse anybody or anything like that, but we'll give you slightly over 24 hours. Yeah, and just try and fit it in that time. Look, most people are completing within a half an hour because now we have this really cool analytics. And I actually love analytics. I'm a sports, you name it, any kind of analytics I can get, I think it's interesting. So I'm actually looking at the analytics of you. But most people are going in and load, and they're finishing it really quickly. So yeah. Any other questions? Anything? Nope. Well, it's a smoky day out here. It's been really smoky lately. It's been hard to sort of do the things I need to do outside or get any exercise. So, you know, if you get out, try and get some exercise, but don't stay out there for too long because the air quality is awful. Yes, and yeah, I got nothing else. It just keeps getting stranger, so I'm just gonna roll with it, everybody. Be safe, be good people, and do good things, and yep, be good. Anyway, take care, everybody. Yes, have a good one. Reach out if you need anything. Peace, everybody. Thanks for being here.